Councillors, members of the Rotorua Lakes and Te Tato committees, no mai haramai, welcome to our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting today. And this is a meeting that will continue on to tomorrow as well, the 17th and 18th of May 2021. So welcome to you all today. We are streaming live, so those watching from at home and afar, welcome to you to our meeting today as well. Could I please ask that our mobile phones be turned off and put out of sight, and I will make sure that we can allow sufficient time to have a break from time to time to clear any urgent messages. Welcome to members of the public. Nice to have you with us this afternoon, and we do have a member of the press with us too. Welcome. So we've got 2 days where we're going to be obviously looking at the feedback on the LTP, the plan. So it'll be a good 2 days of work that we have ahead of us. And this is our full Strategy and Policy and Finance Committee meeting. So it's just, while we're deliberating, sorry, not deliberating, it's getting the feedback on the LTP, it is a full Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting. May I ask Councillor Donaldson, please, to open with a prayer. Thank you.
Madam Chair. Tukua ti wairua kia rere ki ngā taumata. Ai arahi I a tātou mahi, me te tātou whai I ngā tikanga a rātou mā. Kia mau, kia ita, kia kore, ai e naro. Kia pupuri, kia whakamaua, kia tina, hui e tai ki e.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Could I call for any apologies, please? Mr. Berryman Kemp, an apology, thank you. Councillor McPherson, thank you. I have a mover and a seconder, please, that we accept the apologies. Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. Thank you, Councillor Kumar. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, thank you, carried. Any declarations of interest today? Oh, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Councillor Donaldson, beg your pardon.
Madam Chair, somewhere buried in the raw feedback, I did see reference to Crankworks funding. I just declare that I'm a administrative chair of the board of Mountain Bike Events Limited. So if that comes up for debate, I'll abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. So noted. Thank you. Now I do, excuse me, I do just seek your approval for motion that I want to move today, councillors. I want to put to you today that we temporarily suspend Standing Order number 21.5, that requires members may speak only once. Standing Order number 3.5 provides for a temporary suspension of standing orders, and I'd just like to read that out so we're all clear about this. Any member of a council, committee, subcommittee and subordinate body and local and community board may move a motion to suspend standing orders at a meeting of which they are a member. Any such motion must also include the reason for the suspension. If seconded, the chairperson may put the motion without debate, and at least 75% of the members present and voting must support the motion for it to be carried. That's 27, Schedule 7 of the Local Government Act 2020. So, as per the above that I've just read out, the above provision, it is recommended to temporarily suspend Standing Order 21.5. Members may speak only once, to allow members sufficient opportunity to undertake LTP deliberations at the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting on the 17th and 18th of May 2021. It really just means it allows us all to speak more than once. And I think this is really significant. I mean, our LTP deliberations are significant, and I don't want anybody to feel that they cannot ask a question more than once. So this is really to suspend the standing orders. So I'd like to please have a mover and a seconder that the committee temporarily suspend Standing Order 21.5. Members may speak only once to a motion at a meeting for the 17th and 18th of May SP and F meetings. The reason is to allow members sufficient opportunity to undertake LTP deliberations. Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you, Councillor Yates. I'd like to put that motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Thank you. Thank you. Committee members, that is carried. Staff reports, so we're moving ahead nicely. Recommendation, consideration of feedback to the... Yes, to the Rotorua Lakes Council Long-Term Plan 2021 to 2031 Consultation Document. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, to receive that report? Thank you, Councillor Wang. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye to receive the report. Thank you. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Una, I think you want to just give a brief overview. Thank you. Is this more in the way of a scene setting? Thank you.
Yep. So tēnā koutou katoa. Yes, so thank you, Madam Chair. So I've just got a couple of slides just to really set the scene for today's deliberations and just to put into context where we are at in terms of the journey for the long-term plan 2021 to 2031. So I'll just ask whether the presentation can be pulled up. The full screen. Technology to...
Thank you. We're just getting that up on the screen, so... Well, shall we go with that?
Yep, we might.
Here we go.
I can work with that if need be.
I think so.
Just take it off the presentation and I'll just work with it as a PowerPoint. Okay, we'll just use it like this. Okay, so the purpose of today's session and tomorrow's is to consider all of the feedback and make decisions to guide the setting of the long-term plan 2021 to 2031. Over the course of probably more than sort of 6 to 8 months now, this was a journey that started back in September of last year, and you were all involved in a series of forums which led to the then adoption and the taking out of the Mahi Consultation Document. So today you're now at that process of following an intensive engagement period. You have had in front of you all of the feedback that had been received, and today is the opportunity to consider all of that feedback against the original and preferred options that you went out with in your Mahi document. Next screen, please. It's not working now. So, Consultation Document Mahi was signed off by Audit New Zealand and adopted by Council on the 25th of March 2021, and there was 4 weeks worth of engagement, and that ran from the 30th of March to the 30th of April. The Mayor and councillors, Lakes and Rural Community Board members and Te Tātou Aotearoa members actively led the engagement activity within our community on the proposals that were put forward in that consultation document. And you were out and about in over 7 face-to-face sessions with the community. Next slide, please. You will recall that the basis of Mahi was based upon some really strong key strategies. The Homes and Thriving Community Strategic Framework, there was a draft Community Safety Strategy, the draft Economic Development Strategy, Council's Climate Action Plan and the 30-year Infrastructure Plan. Then when Mahi went out and undertook its consultation and engagement with the community, you were honing in on 4 consultation questions. The first one being based around the Aquatic Center and asking the community around how far do they want to take future development there. Is it a case of just fixing the issues or an upgrade to provide for a regional facility to be proud of? Another question was based around the community safety plan, the development of that plan, and also questions around the level to which that community safety should be funded additionally. There was also questions around the fees and charges, so looking at how some activities of councils where there is a direct benefit to the person creating that need for the service. And over time, some of these fees have not kept up with things like increasing costs around regulation and additional resources to fulfil those activities. The question came down to whether there was the feeling to directly recoup that money and funding through fees and charges directly, or whether to increase the rates accordingly. And the final question was around the consideration of rates affordability, and so looking at a question around lowering of the uniform annual general charge. So, thank you. So when engagement completed at the end of those 4 weeks, we've had some really valuable community feedback. We've had more than 780 individual groups and organisations providing feedback. 611 people have provided feedback online via the forms and email and post. There were more than 60 young people involved in face-to-face engagement and giving feedback. And over the course of 7 hui and evening sessions, 105 people have come along and spoken directly with yourselves and provided opportunities that way. So ultimately, where we are at today is your opportunity to consider all of the feedback that has been received, to consider all of those conversations that you have had with the community, and compare that to your original preferred option that you went out in the Mahi document. How we propose to run today is an opportunity to provide you topic by topic, an opportunity to discuss and consider that feedback against what I said before was your original position. So that brings us to the end of this presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions on, at this point in time, it's around sort of the process of today or even on the feedback itself. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Una. So are there any questions on the process to date, please, that was used? Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Una, just in relation to the 5 key strategies listed in your presentation, just for the record, those were all adopted at committee and full council and to be underpinning documents for this consultation, am I right?
Yes, you are correct. A number of them are still work in progress, though. So it's a bit of a mix in terms of where they're at in terms of their development stage. Remember, the draft community safety plan was adopted by the SPNF committee as a draft and was taken out through this process to get feedback into that plan. And the draft economic development strategy, again, has more work to do. Remember, there was 3 action plans that need to be prepared, and the timeline for that was later on during this year for them to come back through this committee and then to council, and at that point you would be finalising an economic development strategy. The other strategies and plans have all been out through their own consultation and engagement phases, and yes, we're structured in a way that these key strategies underpin the delivery of this long-term plan.
Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the Chair, Una. One of the processes was the huis that we had, and one particular hui was in Mamaku, for example, where the Mamaku people given an indication of, after the hui, a collation of what we had discussed there, or are we going to be deliberating that today?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, that's what you're discussing today. So all of, you'll see in your Stella library, the feedback has been collated into a number of different formats and ways for you to have spent the time going through that feedback. One request in particular from you as elected members was to be able to see the breakdown of where people see themselves as being represented and how that feedback looks. So one of those documents in your pack is having a look at people who identify with being Te Arawa, identification of being either in the Lakes Community Board area or the Rural Community Board area, and then those people who are represented by the council at large.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Look, so we can move on to the substantive discussions today. I'd like to take 2 and 3, and I'll put those together and put those motions. That the committee receive the staff analysis and recommendations to the consultation document topics, and that the committee notes the direction set during the course of considering feedback will determine and guide the development of the final long-term plan 2021 to 2031, and that the final long-term plan 2021 to 2031 will be adopted by Council on the 28th of June 2021. Could I please have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Mr Thomas. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll put those that motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, thank you, carried. So we move now to the in-depth discussions on the various topics, and the first one we have to discuss this afternoon is the Aquatic Center. And I will read this out. The Aquatic Centre, preferred option, option 3. Option 3 is Council's preferred option. Rotorua's strengths, in particular our active lifestyle and environment, are directly linked to the provision of a modern aquatic centre that meets the needs and expectations of its users. Investment into the Aquatic Centre has been delayed for a number of years while Council investigated options for future development. It is time to undertake this investment and deliver upon the connecting vision to action commitment made in the long-term plan 2018 to 2028 of reviving our facilities. With our district being surrounded by lakes and rivers, it is important our tamariki children have the skills and confidence to be safe in our waters, and the Aquatic Centre plays a vital role in this. May I please have a mover and a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Thank you, Mr Thomas. Now, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Discussion. Oh, discussion. Beg your pardon. I am rather key. Excuse me. Yes, Mr Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
No, I'm happy to move our preferred option and also say that during the feedback that we had, mainly in this room here, with which I thought was run very well, we were moving around to the various tables and the groups, and noted here the majority were in support of our preferred option, option 3, 389. So I'm pleased that this is the recommendation that has come also from the staff from their feedback. I'm happy to be moving it. Thank you.
So I'm happy to invite any round of discussion at present on the Aquatic Centre. Yes, Your Worship.
Yes, I'm happy to support option 3, even though we heard that the majority certainly wanted to have the full refurbishment and development. I heard at the meetings, actually, and lots of our forums, a lot didn't understand where we once began the journey on the Aquatic Centre in Quiro Park. We had aspirations then for a water-themed family park, and that has changed over from 2013 with Vision 2030. But this option, I think, best reflects what we can do at this stage for the Aquatic Centre and meets most of the community's expectations, given we've done a lot of other upgrade work in Quito Park, including signage and community safety, and ultimately we will get that skateboard park in there as well. But I certainly support this, particularly actually the voices of children and the high users of the Aquatic Centre, even though there was a lot of caution about taking care with the investment at this stage, because many of those users were looking at where we could trim back money. This was given the support as a much-loved facility, and certainly on our visits at the beginning of this term we saw this isn't something that we should just repair. We ought to do a full refurbishment, and we get that feedback constantly, actually, from the public that use it and our community. So I wholeheartedly support option 3.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually won't be supporting option 3. I think that we, as a community, when this journey was started in 2013 or whenever, the vision for the world was very different. We wanted to grow infrastructure, but I don't think we envisioned homelessness. And while this is not directly related to homelessness, but the cost of what we're going to do does reflect into that. And I also believe that COVID was never a factor as well. And while we are trying to sort of come to financial certainty in the next 4 or 5 years, I don't think $28.3 million in a full master plan gratifies that. So I'll probably be supporting something like option 2, where we still do something, but not totally ignore it.
Thank you, Councillor Kumar. Mr Thomas and then Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I support option 3 on this, and I take a lead on that from our lakes communities, and I note that especially at the community hui we had at Kaumuhumuhu, Gisborne Point, there was overwhelming support for option 3, and I do just want to take this opportunity to thank council staff for coming out into our lakes and rural communities to talk with people. There was a lot of excitement from our communities that they were engaged with on this, and it was particularly gratifying to see the iwi engagement, which is a real new thing happening for us out in East Rotorua. I think the point that got a lot of our lakes people supporting option 3 was the inclusion of the Learn to Swim pool. Whenever we have a drowning on our lakes, we all feel that as a personal loss out on the lakes. We take it very hard, and so it was seen as essential that our tamariki, our young people in Rotorua, are taught how to swim. And also, we'd like to see an opportunity for our new migrants and people moving to Rotorua who may have never learnt to swim before. So we see those things being offered by option 3 over option 2 as extremely important. We don't see them as a luxury, we see them as a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Thomas. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that when we first mooted the idea of doing what is now called option 3, the world was an entirely different place, to follow on from Councillor Raj. And we made decisions then based on everything being rosy in the tourism field. We made decisions then based on the fact that we had less than 200 homeless in the city. And we also agreed that while a hydroslide has only got a attention span for a very short time, it was going to be one of those nice to have things. So therefore I won't be supporting option 3. I think that option 2 is far and away sufficient for our needs at the moment, and it indicates to the general public, I believe, that we are prepared as a council to take note of what is going on outside of this room and make decisions accordingly, and that if we need to tighten our belt, we must be seen to be tightening our belt. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. There was a very excellent article in the Herald this morning that talked about leadership in a time of crisis, and the world does not stop because of COVID. So thank you for those comments, Councillor Bentley. Councillor Kai Fong.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just perhaps just by way of clarification, so how I look at the difference between options 2 and 3 is effectively it's a difference of a commitment by this council of 500,000, and that if the rest of the money is not raised, then we don't proceed. And that extra 500,000 is the Learn to Swim pool. And so for that reason, I think that let's be big, be brave, and go for option 3. If we don't get the money, then the additional commitment for us is really just option 2 with a Learn to Swim pool, and that would be why I would think that option 3 would be the way to go. We have to be persuasive to other funders that, you know, we need a hydroslide and a splash pad, and if we can't do that, then at least the commitment to the community is at least an upgraded facility, but with the Learn to Swim opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kai Fong. You're spot on, and I'd like to ask for reassurance that that is in fact the case. That's correct. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Mrs Trumper, then Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Can I just point out to everybody out there is that, I'm just going to get this right, over 80% of our population that have submitted on the Aquatic Center actually approve. And all they ask is that we listen. And that's what they're asking today, is to listen. And one of the submissions that we received as a council was from Whitewater, New Zealand. And they are looking to partner with council for the Aquatic Centre. And I think that that is an opportunity that should be investigated and not negated by people that want to reduce the spend at the Aquatic Centre. And I totally agree with the Learn to Swim, but it wasn't just Learn to Swim. It was our age concern, it was Grey Power, it was Parkside. They have all voted with their tick to say number 3 is what they're looking for. So we have to be brave, we have to make these decisions. And looking at the rural support for the consultation on the Aquatic Centre, which I must thank Una and her team for breaking this down into groups, is over 70% of the rural community have actually voted for option 3. So as chair of the Rural Community Board, I will be supporting option 3.
Thank you, Mrs Trumper. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question before I comment, and jumping ahead a bit to fees and charges. This is access to the Aquatic Centre is one where we didn't propose to raise the fees, am I right?
That's correct.
Correct, yeah. So I see this as an equity issue. I see a lot of the feedback that came in was from young people who can't easily access the lakes. Some of them have never been out of Western Heights in their lives. And I'm sure any of the flash add-ons that might attract funding may well incur an additional charge once you access there. But you know, the strong feedback I sensed through reading all of the submissions and the online feedback to council was that this is highly valued by children, and it's important that from an equity perspective, young people have access to a modern facility that in other circumstances they wouldn't, and so I'd be in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Mr. Isani Tuli. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou. I've had a wide range of opinions discussed on this. The first one goes back to it goes back to there's a preference for our lakes and rivers to be the first place we learn how to swim. That's always been our way as Te Aroa. We've learned how to swim naturally. And so a lot of people are reluctant to do anything outside of protecting our lakes and streams. So option one was some people's call, why invest in a structure when we should be investing in what we already have. Others said that we should be looking at the financial long-term commitment and make sure that council isn't overcommitting itself. So option two was also considered. But a majority of the whānau I talked to, they said they go to Hastings, they go to Tauranga to get those additional features, they go to Hamilton to get those additional features. Why can't the Aquatic Center have the manu pool and all the other add-on things? But so long as the environment is whānau safe, they'll be willing to pay those additional costs. So it did go across option one, option two, and option three. But I think that whānau safety aspect of it, we can go to the river and go to the lake and not guarantee our safety. We should be able to guarantee our kids' safety inside the Aquatic Centre, if that's first and foremost in Kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. Look, when locals talk about what makes Rotorua special, it is our water. It's our lakes, it's our rivers, it's our geothermal. And the submissions in that 483 pages worth had a resounding support for the importance of our Aquatic Centre as a facility to learn to be safe in and on our water, and also as an affordable option for all ages, young and old, to enjoy for the whole day. So when I look at the Aquatic Centre now, those facilities are exactly the same as they were when I learnt to swim 20 years ago. And I want to read you some of the feedback that came from that 483 pages of feedback. The changing room, this is quote, the changing room, toilets, state of the indoor pool are cringe-worthy, run down, embarrassing, in major need of an upgrade. And that feedback and that trend was consistent throughout many of those submissions. So for a rates increase of $8.09 a year per household, I believe this to be a worthy investment for our current and future generations, and will happily support option 3.
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. Councillor Yates.
Tēnā koe, and through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Kai Fong as well as Councillor Donaldson picked up on a couple of things that I wanted to speak about, but I'll actually just revert back to the Learn to Swim pool. And one of the considerations in that for me in particular, and the community that we serve, is our disability community. And that was once again a swaying inclusion for many of us to consider this as a viable option. I'd also like to speak on behalf of Te Arawa, and resoundingly enough through our face-to-face meetings, as well as what has come through in the feedback, whilst a number of our iwi promote and support through endorsement and sponsorship Learn to Swim programs, they could not do that if we didn't have a sufficient space for them to do that. So I would be supporting option 3, as our feedback indicates. Of the 523 that have chosen to submit on this topic, 389 supported option 3. So I'm with the majority.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. And I think our final speaker, Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to note Mr. Thomas's comments about water safety, and I agree. Every time in this, mainly in the summer, every time we read in media that someone has drowned in our lakes, it is incredibly devastating. And definitely the Learn to Swim pool, for people who, like they mentioned, migrants, people who aren't so confident in water, it would be a big bonus for them. Talking to a lot, this is the first time I've actually had a lot of children, a lot of rangatahi come up to me and actively participate in feedback because they want a place where they can be proud of. Reading through the feedback, reading through the from our consultation, you can clearly see that how the facility is run down and how it is in dire need of an upgrade. I went there to the Aquatic Center quite a few times early in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, and talked to some of the swimming groups that were there training, and you could see the moisture running down off the ceiling, down the walls. You could see the rust spots on the ground from where the rust was dripping down from the ceiling. and the complete facility was probably at capacity. There was the aqua jogging going on. Children were there learning. The outdoor 50-metre pool, which has just been recently refurbished, was every lane was being used, and they were so proud to be using that facility out there. Talking to them, they can't wait for the upgrade to happen. And so with that, I am in full support of option 3, and I agree we need to be bold and we need to invest in our community, a facility where a lot of people in our community use. So with that, thank you. I'm in full support of option 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wang. Well, thank you, councillors, for that discussion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Maxwell. Yes, happy to. Yes, certainly.
I won't repeat everything that Councillor Kai Fong said, but it was very interesting, her comments regarding the difference between option 2 and 3 being something like $500,000. I just want us to recall that in this room here just a couple of months ago that NZCT were bold and they gave $500,000 towards the Aquatic Center. So, kia ora.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Thank you, councillors. Thank you. I just want to say that, as the Mayor said, there is only so much in the way of repairs and maintenance that you can do over the years. And I am a frequent user of the pool, and I try to avoid the changing areas and the toilets as much as possible if I can. But I also want to say that the voices of our children in our city and district are important as well, and that they should take the time to attend the meetings and the huis that have been held, and to talk to us as councillors, and also to give feedback in other ways. That's really important, that they be given the same weight of consideration as every other person in our community. It's really important. So look, we have had a mover. It's been moved by Councillor Maxwell, seconded by Mr. Thomas, and I'll read that recommendation and then I'll put the motion. Thank you. That the committee support the inclusion of the Aquatic Centre full master plan redevelopment option 3, 28.3 million into the final development of the long-term plan to be adopted by Council on the 28th of June 2021. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Thank you. Well, I think it's quite clear that there has only been 2, so I don't think a division is necessary. There was 2 that I noted who called out. Thank you. Councillor Bentley and Councillor Kumar. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Thank you. Now, our second topic for the afternoon, which is the community safety. Preferred option, option 1. Council prefers option 1. Council, Te Aroha, the police and key stakeholders are all concerned about an increase in antisocial and criminal behaviour affecting residents and visitors' experiences in Rotorua. Everyone has agreed to work together to address the issue. Safety initiatives will require an increased level of funding to implement. An additional $500,000 a year throughout the next 10 years is believed to be a solid commitment that can aid in delivery and at the same time is considered affordable. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that motion? Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Yates. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded, so I'd like to now invite a round of discussion on that topic. Thank you. And as you know, it's been receiving quite some considerable media attention in recent weeks as well. So yes, Your Worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a long time coming. So while some people believe that we've only just reacted in the last couple of weeks, we went out during the election campaign, which was now a long time ago, and this was a fundamental issue along with housing in that election campaign. And from there, we've become manifestly aware, and I love in the consultation document, that we were open about the facts about our town and our whole district, our wider district. Nothing to be proud of in terms of our victimisation rates and the incidence of criminal offending and the family harm and the level of methamphetamine. So we didn't sit back and do nothing. We then started through workshops, and I remember a very, very good workshop in December, so that is now 6 months ago, that we discussed how can we collectively, with Te Tato o Te Arawa and our community boards and councillors, how can we address this? Whose role is it? And we were very emphatic that it can't be solved by council alone, and it had to be a partnership approach, and that we had to have a strategic approach to this. And while some feel that, you know, we've been to see the Mayor on many occasions and nothing's happened, this was developed in December and actually even further developed over the last few months as public concerns became even more heightened. Public concerns became heightened in the neighbourhoods as well as in the CBD, and is even out into the rural sector and our lakes community. And we've had sporadic incidences that cause us all concern and no comfort as councillors. So we were working out what we can do, and the fundamental good thing is that we have a community safety plan. We now have a plan, and that puts to bed the argument that councils are only about core services. We said we're going to show leadership in this. We're going to show leadership with government departments, with our partnership with Te Arawa, and with our community and our NGOs. And we are now much more clearer, because of the community safety plan, about who does what and how, when we collaborate, we can work together so much more effectively. I believe there's been huge support for the 500,000 per annum. In fact, others have said, and taken it even further in the submissions that you read, invest even more in this, because this, along with housing, are the two issues that are the blot on our landscape that we need to do so much more with. This is a really, this is a good mechanism that we've highlighted in here on what the spend will be used for. I think the other issues that we're working with the businesses in town, and for me, for the inner city, it is about housing and getting more people to live in the inner city. So this linkage here is very important, and also the monitoring and surveillance that we can join up with police. The bit about this that I think is the most interesting going into the future, and this is our long-term plan, not our annual plan, is the development of community centre hubs. And that's very innovative. If you're going to develop infrastructure and housing, where should these community hubs go? And how do we support community-led delivery and social service delivery within those hubs? And that is the future of local government that we see starting to emerge in this discussion. So, of course, as councillors and elected members here, we want to support anything that develops community sense of resilience, optimism about our future, and also encourages investors to come into Rotorua, because certainly at the moment the reputation's been very tarnished by some of the high media publicity that we've had in the recent months, and that's not helpful when we are getting investor interest into moving into our community. So this is a major driver for us. And I'll go a little bit further today to say that one of the issues that I think we need to look at in our safety plan is more community policing in particular hotspots in our district. But that's something, when you've got a safety plan, you start to work on over the next at least year. So I support this initiative. This investment is very small. But it is us saying we're doing our bit, along with police, along with our community and along with iwi, to start to correct the reputation and the public perception about our place that we all love so much. And it has become much more heightened. as Councillor Bentley said, from the emergence of coming out of COVID, we're now really aware of the inequality and the poverty that we're facing in our district. But if you don't have a plan, you're not going to get anywhere. So I totally support this resolution one for the addition of 500,000 that supports a raft of identified actions to implement our community safety plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mrs Trumper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's interesting when people were putting in their feedback about the safety plan and how the rural sector saw this. And we are actually, we've always faced crime, and it has been always a, I suppose, responsibility of us to manage our own properties and our safety as best as we can with cameras, etc., at our cost. For our villages, though, I note that a lot of the concerns were around what a community hub would look like, what community involvement would be in setting up those hubs, and taking on board some of the comments that they've made is slower speed. We've got a village that only has one power supply in, so when the power goes down, they have no way of the being able to switch over and getting power from another area. There's also internet connections, so there's a whole host of things that people have looked at around this community safety plan. So they just don't want to see it happening in Rotorua. They want to see it out in our rural communities so that we actually all share a slice of the pie. And I know that the Community Patrol New Zealand, who work very closely with the police, are looking for assistance and are volunteering their time. And, you know, that is, you know, a community partner that's already offered. So, you know, we've got that feedback and we've got that or feed into council from our community organisations. I'm sorry I can't support the 500,000 because the rural community don't believe it will actually happen. It is sitting at 50-50 as to how this actually is going to fall, to do nothing or to come up with a safety plan, and council does not fund any further. So I have to stay neutral on this.
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective, Mrs Trumper. Councillor Yates, then Mr Thomas.
Kia ora, and through you, Madam Chair, one of the overwhelming conversations that came through whilst we were doing our face-to-face was the fact that the investment needed to be more. So it did pinch more on the 750, and I'll go back to the numbers again. Of the 382 that provided feedback on this, 167 were in favour of option 2, which was to have more. The intent also around that conversation was, by providing more with regards to safety, that the baseline would be $500,000, but at least you'd know if you needed more to extend in order to work with partnerships, that that would be there as well. So I'm in support of option 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Look, it was really interesting for me I went to quite a lot of the community hui that we held, and it was interesting to me that a difference of interpretation of this came up. When I was coming to the more urban-based ones or Rotorua city-based ones, a lot of people were seeing this purely in terms of the issues around trouble happening around the motels and the homeless people that are being housed at the moment. When we were talking about it out in the lakes communities and at Mamaku, they were seeing it in a much broader term in terms of their community safety. And as Mrs Trumper alluded to, they were talking about speed limits, they were talking about power supplies, internet, all those sorts of generalised safety issues. Informally talking to people outside of those hui, out in the lakes area, there was a bit of concern about what a community hub would look like in our lakes areas. They thought it was quite a difficult thing to implement. But one thing that came up, and the Mayor mentioned it, I was really glad that she did, around community policing or community constables. And one thing that came out of the lakes area was, if we had one person that we rang, instead of just getting random people every time, there's a real feeling out in the lakes areas that there's not a lot of point in ringing the police because it's so long for them to come out. You never get the same person twice. So it was quite a different feel from our communities about it. And also, I think we had a majority of support for option 2, with the idea that that extra funding would actually help provide community safety out in the lakes and rural areas, rather than just in town. And that was the point that came through to me time and time again, that they wanted to see issues in the lakes and rural areas addressed across the whole LTP, actually, not just in the urban part of Rotorua. So I would support option 2, just the same as Councillor Yates. Thank you.
Councillor Bentley, then Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to security within this CBD area, I can't speak for rural or lakes, of course, because I no longer live there, but never have we had so much money put towards policing in the terms of city guardians and so forth. 10 years ago, we never had a city guardian. 20 years ago, we had a very beautiful woman running around in bikinis feeding parking meters, which unfortunately no longer happens. I think that by increasing our city guardian spend, when we have never had such poor safety in our city as we have at the moment, surely we should be encouraging people in a police uniform to be a little bit more visible by the general public. And one of the worst things that this council has done of late was actually removing a police presence from the city focus when they decided to make it into a intersection. So I'm not in favour of spending this money.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be supporting option 1, the 500,000 extra. I acknowledge that the numbers are for a higher spend, just on the raw feedback. But what came through to me is, because this is one of the draft strategies, was some, I guess, confusion out there at the engagement sessions of what the actual plan, how it would be implemented and rolled out. So the nuts and bolts weren't clear, and to a lot of the people. And as other councillors have mentioned, we are in a global pandemic environment, which has increased anxiety right throughout the community and throughout the world, actually. A lot of that anxiety is brought around by housing stress and housing affordability stress, which is another focus of our long-term plan. And I also have regard to the sort of wider LTP environment that we're working in. So a lot of these issues, such as speed, especially on state highways, they're being addressed in the feedback to the Regional Land Transport Plan, and I'm on the deliberation subcommittee for that next week. And also issues around safe means of travel, so public transport are all there, and Regional Council have addressed some of these issues in their long-term plan as well. So for me, the 500,000 extra spend so that Council can work with other agencies to deliver a better community safety plan is the measured approach, and so that's what I'll be supporting as moved up there, option 1.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. And Mr. Bassini Tuli, thank you.
Hi, good, Madam Chair. When I first heard the community safety plan, my, I think, instinct was to say option 3, throwing money at the situation will not improve it. It's more a community issue. And then over the last 6 months, I've been through 2 pretty major whānau issues around community safety, and I've just swung 180 the other way. Crime is growing at a rapid rate. And if the council is not at this front and centre, not the police, because as soon as the police turn up, then it just turns into a massive issue. We don't want that. And the council can bring together all those agencies, the tribe. We can all come together to actually prevent a lot of the things that are happening and then respond well, because I don't think we're doing a good job. Over the 6 months, we've got this plan going. When it happened to our whānau, we went out to see what happened in the wider community, and assaults are daily, burglaries are daily, and there's just helplessness throughout the whole community. So I've gone back to option 1, and this issue in particular really changed my mind because of personal experiences.
Thank you, Mr. Pisani Tuli. Councillor Maxwell, then Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be supporting option 1 that's up there. In the past, many surveys that have always been held with our community, finding out what their priorities are. The top priority has always been a safe and caring community. And the Mayor's right, we had excellent workshops in December last year and we had a plan. So I think I'm supporting option 1 that's up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm a little confused over here. I support some of the options in option 1, but I still think that there's some things in option 3 that are palatable. While we can throw some money away, I believe council is responsible for SIPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. So how our cities look, how our neighborhoods look, we've already been putting a lot of money and funding towards all of this. And now we have been for the last 2 years, I mean, if you read the media and listen to the news, they've deemed that the councils are missing in action, irrespective of how much we put into that. My question is, what will the extra 500K and why 500K do for us?
Thank you. It actually is outlined there, quite a number of the strategies, well, they are all outlined there, and that forms the plan, actually. So, yes. Councillor Kai Fong, then Councillor Tapson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm kind of wavering between option 1 and option 2, and I suppose this is kind of one of those chicken and egg situations, is that if we commit an extra $250,000 per year over the 3 years, what gives on the other side? And we probably don't know that at the moment unless there's some kind of Magic Thomas answer. No. And so I just go back to the public consultation, which was, we've got this problem because of COVID. There hasn't been a time when we've had more media coverage about this, about people feeling unsafe in their community, the negative comments around certain parts of our city, and the reputational damage that we're doing to Rotorua as a tourist destination. And that could, be some significant long-term damage. So, one of the things that came through in the feedback was that we really need to be looking at addressing some of the grassroots issues with this. So we should be spending as much money as we can in this area while the problem is so prevalent. It's not going to go away. So I guess that I'm probably leaning towards spending more money on that, but subject to the rider, where's it going to come from? And I think that this is also perhaps an opportunity for us. We've talked about the fact that, and other councillors have raised the fact that there hasn't been the police presence, but here's an opportunity for us. If we say that we're prepared to put some money into this, we are wanting to strengthen those relationships. Can we leverage the fact that you know, if we're going to do more, then we expect our partners like the police to do more as well alongside us. So I guess that probably convincing myself option 2.
Thank you. Councillor Taxell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I think leading on from the discussion from Councillor Kaifong, it's really important that the solution to this is done in partnership. We saw that a lot in the submissions as well, that it is a central government issue, it's a policing issue, but when I look at, well, we've been very transparent, when I look at the issues that our community has faced in terms of antisocial behaviour, culture of drinking and violence, and also methamphetamine, those are health issues as well. So I hope that as we move forward, we do that not only alongside iwi and the police, but the District Health Board, or whatever the new District Health Board will be in future, because it really is a health issue for our community. And it's only recently, when the 4 wellbeings have come back into council, where we've had to take a tough stance to say, well, we may not be getting additional funding from government, but we need to look at what we're doing in terms of extending the great work that we already do through our regulatory services, through our dog patrols, through our liquor licensing. I did want to highlight as well, I will be supporting the option 1, but our proposal in there actually also mentions to prioritise grants to support community group initiatives that increase safety. So this is a buy local for local approach. We're saying that we acknowledge that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work in our community. We have significant issues in all areas of our community, whether they're affluent or low socioeconomic, but we will also provide the opportunity for local grants. And I lastly want to acknowledge Ko Te Tuara, Tōtara or Fordlands, the Fordlands Community Centre, for the excellent submission in this, which is a great example of how our communities are ready and willing to work with us to find those buy local for local approaches. So very happily support option 1.
Thank you. Did you just say you were supporting the option as outlined? Thank you. Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and tautoko the comments before me. Through the consultation period, I think again I heard from the different areas in our community, and they have different views on what community safety means to them. And so, out Rotorua, the road speeds were a major issue, and in other communities, they'll have separate issues, as if if there was a natural disaster and there was a blackout, what would they do then? But I think that a really important factor here is the need to a partnership with community organisations, and to be supporting community organisations who are working on the ground in our communities with the different communities. I think a really great example of that is a youth centre pilot working with rangatahi, supporting rangatahi who are often truant and not engaged in the school system. That has been a great success, and it's only just started. I went and visited them as well, and I can tell you those kids were really, really engaged. It was a different setting. They had support staff there, they had teachers there, and you could really tell that there was a change happening. In conclusion, I do support option 2. I think this is a really urgent issue, and while we're hearing every day community safety is often the priority, option 2 I support the more funding put towards this.
Thank you. Yes, Your Worship.
A right of reply as the mover.
Yes, certainly, when we come to that, yes. Look, there has been some comment, though, on option 2, which would require an additional, 250,000, which would have an impact. I mean, it's got to come from somewhere. So perhaps I might ask, Thomas, would you perhaps give us a little bit of an outline of what the impact might be? Or
thank you,
so
Madam.
we can be a little bit clear on what we might be looking at here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just for councillors' future reference, I guess $250,000 would equate to roughly 0.25% increase in the overall rates increase. So just as a general rule of thumb. So therefore, if you are looking to increase the expenditure by $250,000 without any further mitigations of other expenses, this would increase the proposed rates increase by 0.25%.
Yes, I know we have I know we have the percentage. I always like to see what does that mean for me as a ratepayer, and I'm sure everybody else is. What is that additional cost? It's about, what, another 10, is it? 10 dollars?
Yeah, at the moment, every 100,000 is roughly 0.1, so therefore 250,000 would be 0.25 or 0.25%. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Your Worship would like to have the last bit, but I've just got a few more to. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Wang. Councillor Kai Fong.
Just a question. We have the COVID Recovery Fund.
Resilience.
The Resilience Fund. And as I understand it, only 500,000 of that has currently been allocated or less. Is there an opportunity for the criteria for that fund to be extended to include options for initiatives around community safety as opposed to just simply COVID recovery, to find a pool of money to allocate to safety? Or
Well,
is that not?
I think we set the terms and conditions of that fund, so I suspect that for council it would have to, I mean, that council sets that. So if we are worrying about the additional, if that would be correct, would it not, Thomas?
So again, for you, Madam Chair, correct that the Resilience Fund is debt funded. I would just highlight to councillors that this sort of expenditure is operating expenditure and therefore would be ongoing. So it wouldn't just be a one-off borrowing unless you look to rectify how you funded that into the future through other sources. So.
Right, thank you. Can I, before I ask Your Worship, as the mover, to have probably the last say on this, can I just say that too, what does concern me is that we're starting to use COVID as an excuse for so much that I'm hearing that's, and if we're being honest too, there has been rather a high tolerance to criminal activity and antisocial behaviour in our city for some time now. So while COVID has exacerbated it, I don't think the blame should lie entirely with COVID, but at least having a plan and ensuring that we work our plan, that's where we'll start to see definitely some improvement. So I certainly will, in my own capacity, be supporting this as well. We hear so much the concern of our community, so this is not the time to shy back. It is a time for us to say we're going to do something, we're going to work that plan, we've got partners that are alongside of us who must step up and who must do their bit as well. It cannot be left to council alone. So thank you, and I'll ask Your Worship perhaps the mover to
yes,
the last say.
It's been an interesting discussion, and I think we've covered what we heard during the consultation. This is an issue that calls for leadership, and leadership means being bold about shaping our community. I can't believe that we're sitting around the same table with councillors who have brought issues in urgency to committee meetings about community safety, about animal control, but don't want to invest in this strategy. We should be absolutely emphatically behind this where we see our city placed today and our wider district. If we don't support this investment, we can't go to other funders and say, please come and co-invest with us. We can't go to iwi, we can't go to those public organisations, grants, because we haven't put skin in the game about what we believe is absolutely fundamental to building a resilient, connected community with hope in our future. I didn't attend the community safety meeting called by an MP, and I didn't attend because we were going out with our own community safety strategy and the long-term plan at exactly the same time. I wanted to hear from the community first. We've now heard from our community, and I urge all councillors and elected members here today to support. It is option one. I don't think going to option two actually gives us, because we feel comforted that we're putting more money at it, won't necessarily solve the problem. I believe it's option one, and you always review your community safety plan once we get it implemented. And if we need to call for more investment on an annual plan in the future, that's where we go, if we see that we need to put more strength into it. So I wholeheartedly support this resolution at 500,000 per annum. That gives us leverage to go to the police and say we've got skin in the game. We believe in our community. We are addressing those issues that are impacting upon our people, our place, and also our reputation in the future. So I really urge us on this one to be unanimous in the support for this option, to show the public and central government that we are prepared to go out on a limb and have our own community safety plan, and that's leadership. And so that's where I believe, of all of these issues coming before, this is one of the greatest needs for us to invest. So that's probably enough on this, but this is the crying issue in our community along with housing. And if we say no to this, we're actually just putting blither on things like public meetings where people are turning up saying, we're worried. We heard it. I'm still waiting to have a meeting with our MP to bring a solution to the table from that public meeting. But we care, and we need to do this across the board with all of our MPs and with any government who is in power at the time to say, we're investing, we need your help, and we're in for the long drive to get this fixed.
Thank you, Your Worship. No further discussion? Thank you. Well, it has been moved and seconded that the committee support the Council's creation of a community safety plan and include an additional $500,000 per year for the implementation of identified actions, option 1, into the final development of the long-term plan to be adopted by Council on the 28th of June 2021. Moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Thank you. I'll call division.
Show of hands.
Show of hands. Thank you. All those in favour, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Against? Carried. Carried. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion, councillors. Please for the final number on that, just so we make so everybody's. I know we had 2. 7-6. Thank you. Thank you. I will take topic 3, and then if we move through that, then we will have a break. So, topic 3. Fees and charges, the preferred option, option 2. Option 2 is Council's preferred option. An in-depth review of the services and who benefits was undertaken in 2018. The basis of assumptions for the creation of the funding splits, funding policy in brackets, are still considered relevant today. The issue is that Council have been trying to absorb the rising costs and to keep fees and charges static. This is not sustainable going forward. An additional 2.8% rates increases to hold fees and charges at current levels is not perceived to be fair, nor in alignment with the Council's rating principles. Could I please ask for a mover and a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Thank you, Councillor Wong. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Wang, I do apologise. So it's now open for any discussion. Thank you, councillors. Mr. Thomas, and apologise for that, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Look, it's hard to argue with the feedback figures on this. I would just like to just make a couple of comments that I picked up from the community huies we had again. And what came through quite a bit was that they felt that this was an oversimplified option where it was either fees and charges increase or on the rates. And actually, we got a lot of feedback that there were some things where they felt it should have been on the rates because it was of community good. There were others where it was a really obvious user pays situation. So I think we should be very careful about what fees and charges we're raising, because there are a number that do have a community benefit to them. I think another comment that we got from the lakes areas, and I'm sure this applies to the rural areas as well, is things like building consents and that sort of stuff are actually more expensive for someone who's doing a building out at Rotorua or out at Rotorua, just because of the travelling time of staff to go out there and inspect, and the number of inspections. The costs are higher for those communities. So they were kind of feeling like it would be good to have some sort of level set on those charges, where it was sort of shared across the whole community. And I think the other thing that came through was that a lot of people, especially around building consents, when they're doing a smaller consent, like adding on to their house, building a garage, something like that, the process was very complex. They found it, a lot of our whānau found it very hard to follow the process. They were dealing with a different person every time they rang up. And so they were making the point that they would like someone like, you know, the navigators we had for the flood a few years ago. So I guess what they were asking for was, if these fees go up, that there needs to be more efficiency and simplification as well, rather than just a cost-plus basis of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any further? Thank you, Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I just wanted to emphasise some of the feedback that we had in the submissions about the fees and charges still remaining affordable for those in the not-for-profit and also for sports events and higher-age needs, understanding that, you know, those are really the people in our community that are doing this off the smell of an oily rag and provide a very valuable service. So just emphasising the need to have special circumstances for them. But also I really like the feedback that came through, and it's connected to the housing crisis. And we had examples of larger families and households now catering for up to 7 to 10 people on one property, and the need for them to have assistance when trying to have help processing consents as they adapt their once family home to now double, sometimes triple the amount of people it was designed for. So perhaps if we could take that feedback on board, that an increase in fees should also be reflected by an increase in service. And we had great examples, great suggested examples of having face-to-face designated people to help with the processing of consent, so that it's easier to manage and also more information easily accessible online. And there's my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Patasi Tule.
Yeah, kia ora. A lot of the community will always say no to any increase in any costs, and especially around issues of poverty. But what we did notice, and I want to go back to what Mr. Thomas was saying, the navigator position. If whānau don't mind paying if the service gets value for money, and often some whānau pay but they don't feel like they're getting that reciprocal service. So if there was a navigator to make the consent process easier, then they would totally support that. So.
Thank you. Councillor Yates.
Tēnā koe, and through you, Madam Chair, also supporting my previous colleagues and their comments around a navigator position. It definitely came through loud and strong. Another one that also came through was the request, especially for the aquatics, and given that we've already spoken about that, around fees and ensuring that it is equitable and that they remain low for those of our community that benefit most from the Aquatic Centre. So I'm in support of it too.
Thank you. Councillor Kai Fong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd just like to voice my support for those that have spoken before about option 2, and I agree that the increase in the level of service would be greatly appreciated, because we don't want to be putting roadblocks in the way of people who are wanting to get on and build houses, particularly with that being another key plank of our strategy. So definitely, user pays, But I did just love this comment about equity, is that not only should dog owners pay registration fees, but cat owners should too.
I'm sure that was rather said facetiously. Thank you. Mrs. Trumper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So looking at the results of the rural sector, they also majority support one. Although one of the surprising figures here was that over 20% supported increasing rates, which I thought for the rural sector was quite a hard case. The one thing that I did have raised with me was the library charges and how that they are running at a loss. But people are concerned about the rise in charges for the library, and that they would like to really see how that can be managed so that we can encourage people to use the library as opposed to putting obstructions in front of them. But other than that, supporting option one.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yes, that you really can't argue with this, but there was some innovation in the public feedback that I really enjoyed, with areas asking for the library bus to be reinstated. Then they feel they're getting value for service. Arts groups have actually asked that when the Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre is completed, that community arts is affordable access to this upgraded facility. And I also loved a workshop at Mamaku, and I thought you'd mention it, Mrs. Trumper, that was really innovative about services and saying, look, if you give us a lawnmower, we as a community group would mow the verges outside our houses, and would love to do that as an employment initiative rather than Infracore coming. So when I think, and it wasn't a criticism of Infracore, it was saying it gives us jobs and it gives us something to do with our unemployed people up here in Mamaku, and we think we'd do a better job because of a sense of pride. So I think that was quite interesting to look in the future with our community hubs. Are we really allowing the community to own and take pride in what we just accept as a service delivery model by a CCO? So I really loved that input, and I'd love to see us look at that when we get into the hub development. But we really can't argue with this. It's one of those devils with rather blunt tools that we've got at local government, and that's our issue actually at the moment, about funding tools that we're taking to a more central challenge by local government New Zealand. But I support the resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you. Yes, I support the motion that's there, but I'd like to make a comment about somebody touched on it earlier, I think the Energy Event Centre and parks, various things there. I don't know what the cost might go up there, but I'd like it to be kept as affordable as possible, because I see the numbers climbing down there at the Energy Centre for basketball and various things, which pleases me, means our young ones and the people are getting out there, events that are being held down there, kapahaka. Just please keep it affordable if we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson, then Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I sense strong support for the option in the consultation document to adjust the fees and charges. Just in terms of the feedback that's been quite rightly raised by colleagues about the need for navigators and easier consenting. I think a lot of that is going to be addressed in our Homes and Thriving Community strategy and in our community safety plan with these community hubs. There'll be greater engagement and a lot of those concerns, and that I guess that understanding of processes will be delivered in that. So, you know, I'm happy with the proposal as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm in total support of option 2, and you can clearly see from the 355 total feedback, 299 are in support of option 2. But we absolutely do note the comments that I've heard as well, that they're happy to pay, but they would like the service level to match the cost level as well. But that would be it. I'm in total support of option 2.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Would you like a final say there, Councillor Donaldson? You did move. Sorry. No.
Nothing to add. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, it has been moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Wang, so I'll put those 2 points there under the recommendation that the committee supports Council in the setting of pricing for direct benefit services, increasing fees and charges across a number of service delivery areas, including planning, energy event centre, parks and inspection, into the final development of the long-term plan to be adopted by Council on the 28th of June 2021. 2, that the committee note the basis for price setting has been developed on increasing fees where there has been no increase in over 2 years and where the current funding for the overall service does not meet the funding policy. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you. I'll just take this topic and thank you. Our next topic, UAGC, the preferred option, which is option 1. I'm going to just move on to this one and then we will take a break. Thank you. Option 1 is Council's preferred option. The level at which the UAGC is set can affect the proportion of rates collected. Because of Rotorua's high proportion of residential properties, the current UAGC has the effect of the majority of the general rates being applied to residential properties, in particular properties valued at $500,000 and below. In reducing the UAGC, we would see general rates shift back to the proportion of our district's capital value. This would see the general rate for residential ratepayers shift to rural ratepayers, as well as seeing a shift from low value to high value properties. Could I please ask for a mover and a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Thank you. So I could like to invite any discussions. Councillor Bentley.
Madam Chair, just for the people that are watching and perhaps also in attendance, could you explain exactly what UAGC is?
Thomas, I'll let Thomas, he'll give it the official. I always say it's applied to each property, but that needs a bit more refined commentary, I think.
In a very simplistic way of saying it, it is a fixed portion of the general rate that every property will pay regardless of capital value. That's as simplistic as I can put it.
Yes. Thank you very much, Councillor Bentley, because we take it for granted that everybody listening will actually know, so that's a good point. Thank you for raising that. Yes, Your Worship.
Look, this was a no-brainer, and I must say I really enjoyed at the consultation with the laminated sheet that some of us had to go right through a laminated sheet about the UAGC, and then they'd all sit there and say, why wouldn't we support it dropping from 475 to 425? So it was unanimous. I don't think it was well understood that that was a method of being able to smooth the burden on the ratepayer. But it was unanimously supported at every meeting that I went to. Who would ever suggest that it needed to be increased?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I totally agree. Reading through 815 pages of online feedback, that people don't understand what this means, that a decrease of 75, they thought that was coming off their rates bill rather than shifting the burden to somebody else. So why wouldn't you support a bigger decrease? Clearly a number did see where that shift would go. And so again, I see the $50 decrease as the measured approach without, I guess, shifting the burden with unintended consequences. So I'm happy with option 1.
Thank you. I suspect there won't be too many, well, I don't know. Mrs Trumper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, there is definitely a comment coming. I can see Thomas's smile already without even looking at his face. Can I just point out that rural residential properties over 700,000 and any rural properties, which is everybody south of town, north of town, will actually face that $50 increase on their rates greater than $50. And the one thing that really people do not understand is if you have a $50 decrease in your urban rates, is roughly, I'm just guessing here, about $1.3 million. So that has to be picked up by a smaller portion of the community, which is your rural ratepayers. And so a $50 rate deduction is almost a $500 increase in some properties of pastoral farming. So it's not an equitable drop at all, and I suppose there's no surprise to those that understand what a UAGC is. Rural expect the UAGC to be as high as it can possibly be to reduce the pressure on capital properties and how much rates they pay in general rates. So I can't support this because 60% of the rural people that have put in feedback want the status quo. In fact, one actually wanted to know why it hasn't gone back up to the 30% allowable in the UAGC and targeted rating. So the rural community cannot support the reduction of the UAGC, knowing full well the effects of that on businesses, because if you reduce it, you actually also put greater pressure on your businesses because they pay 1.72 in a differential. So I think everybody needs to be mindful that a $50 reduction off your rates is really not, I suppose in the scheme of things, a really great reduction. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs Trumper. Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Look, it was interesting that in the Lakes community, we had a different reaction to rural, even though we make up pretty well entirely rural residential. And it's most probably because we have some very poor communities in our area, but the consensus that seemed to come through, even from those with higher valued properties, was they were prepared to pay that extra to support our lower valued properties where people may be suffering or finding it hard to meet their rating costs. I think it is also worthwhile noting, while we're talking about a $50 drop in the UAGC, you also have an increase on your rates no matter what the value of your house. So if you had a $300,000 house, it puts another $18 on your rates a year. So it isn't a complete $50 drop, it's sort of between 40 and creeping down from then on. But given the feedback we had from the Lakes community, I would support dropping the UAGC to 425. I think we had a fairly even split between dropping it even further to 400, and that was really around helping those communities that suffer on all fronts. They suffer from low wages, they suffer from low house prices, they suffer from low ability to get employment, and our community at least looked at wanting to support those people.
Thank you very much, Mr Thomas. That's really, you really hear at times like this the value of having the rural and the Lakes members at our board so that we get an understanding of how things fall in your area and get the feedback that is good to inform us. Sorry, now is there... Mr Thomas, you actually were the mover, and so did you want to, if there no further discussion, I'd ask you, oh sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Taps.
Sorry, just to add to it, I do support the proposal of a decrease of $50, and just want to mention that, you know, this is something that the council has thought about and deliberated on for many, many years. And I remember Councillor Janet Wepper used to really push for us to lower the UAGC charge, because as the prices of the properties increase, we need to remember that those most affected by this actually are those in our lower income areas. And when we think about, like the Lakes community, like the rural community, but even Fordlands, where the average income per year is $19,000. So by using mechanisms like this that we do have, we're ensuring that that spread is equitable for those that are least likely to be able to afford it, but also are most likely to be suffering from many other difficulties in their lives too. So happy to support the option of decreasing, and very pleased that we've come to a conclusion of decreasing it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell, because there's definitely been areas in our community that have more than shared their load in terms of the UAGC over the years. So thank you for that. Mr. Thomas, do you have a final comment at all?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I'm happy with my previous comments. I think I covered everything there.
It's been moved and seconded that the committee supports council to reduce the UAGC from $475 to $425, a decrease of $50, option 1, that the new UAGC is incorporated into the final development of the long-term plan to be adopted by the council on the 28th of June 2021. I'll put that motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Thank you. So noted. Thank you, councillors. That's carried. Thank you very much. Can we take perhaps a 10-minute break and resume at 2:45? Thank you. Making good progress. Thank you. actions identified in He Papakainga, He Tapori, Turi Kura, Te Popo, Rautaki Homes and Thriving Communities Strategic Framework, that the committee notes the further feedback received and, where appropriate, incorporate the feedback into the framework and action plans, and 3, that the committee supports ongoing work between Rotorua Lakes Council and partnership with stakeholders and the wider community to lead the implementation of the plan. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Wang. So it's now open for discussion.
Well, I'll open the discussion.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Your Worship.
I'm very pleased to be supporting this recommendation, and I want to congratulate, and I know we're getting into the long-term plan, but a discussion that the Chief Executive's led with our other partners that is reinforced in this recommendation. It was a great start last week having that announcement for those in motels and the use of motels, and we always said that is just the start and the rest is still to come, and this resolution allows us a mechanism to go forward where we work with Te Arawa, we also work with philanthropy, and we also work in partnership with central government about opening up the pipeline of our homes and building more homes. If there's anything that's come out here, I think actually when we started this, we may have even undershot the mark a bit about how many homes we need, and there were some very good submissions. The majority of submissions are totally in support of this. So as per the community safety, we needed our own housing strategy. That's our plan. We've got that. When we've got that, we go out to others, and this resolution allows that to continue, and this has to continue at real pace. And as we worked with central government and the task force over the last 6 weeks, we've shown that Rotorua is going out on a limb to do things really differently. And that is, again, community leadership. And that's leadership on an amazing challenge that we've got before us. We know we can't address homelessness until we start building more houses, and that includes papakainga and social housing. And that has to be implemented at haste and at pace, and build on the good work that's been done over the last year, actually. So great that we've got the plan. Great that we've now got the partners at the table working with us in a leadership centre with a task force here. And now it's not more talk. This is about setting hard goals that we've done in our housing strategy about how many homes we build, how many sections we open up, and the mechanisms for doing that, along with the infrastructure that we need to enable that to happen. So this is the other with pace that we really need to give great urgency to. We are. And I'm very proud to support this recommendation today.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Look, I really support this plan as well. I think it is a great opportunity for Rotorua, and we do need to be doing this work. The one thing that has come to me, I guess, once again from the Lakes community is a plea for them not to be forgotten. We have housing issues in our Lakes areas as well. It's more hidden than it is in town because people aren't staying in motels, they're staying in the whānau's garage or spare room, but we have houses out there with 3 bedrooms and 10 people living in them. One thing that came through loud and clear at our community consultation was an enthusiasm, especially in East Rotoiti, for the trusts to develop their land. And I was asked to come back to council, which I've done, and say, how can we start progressing papakainga out our way? So we have the sites there, or iwi have the sites there that they would like to develop. So there was a hope from that community that they would not get forgotten and put to the end of the list. And one thing in particular they talked about around Papakainga was perhaps adjusting the criteria or for it, and especially in terms of it being adjacent to the marae. We have a lot of marae at East Rotorua, and there isn't necessarily land adjacent to the marae, but the trust or the hapu will have land a bit further away. So they would like to be able to look at that slight disconnection between Papakainga and the local marae. So they're really hoping that some work can happen there, and they did really ask me to stress some of them would like to get going as soon as possible and want to know how council can help them down that path. And the other plea that came through was that we do have housing issues and we do want to be helped as well in our area. Fully support the developments in town though.
Mr Thomas. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm generally in favour of this advice that we received, but I do think that we have to, as a council, tidy up and get fairly much more proactive with the developers and home builders with regard to our consenting and make it a pleasant process to build a house rather than one of continual back and forth with council, as I have had complained to me of late. So improve our consenting process, I would say.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Fully support the recommendation. You know, we in previous long-term plans and annual plans, you know, we've had growth assumptions presented to us, looking at low, high and medium growth. The understanding from Rotary Economic Development is that for the past 2 years we've been tracking at the high end of population growth, so hence we're in the chronic housing shortage that we face now. I was really impressed by the submission from a developer who presented 3 graphs, and even if we address our housing shortage, addressing the high growth scenario, we'll still be in a housing, we'll still have a high housing shortfall after 10 years. One thing I do note in a lot of submissions and a lot of media commentary is a lot of finger pointing goes on about consenting, and just in the Herald today, a comment from an Auckland developer where there's commentary about I guess the difficulties with consenting being put through Auckland Council. That developer said Rotorua was an example where he had 3 friends who had excellent support in Rotorua in getting developments through and done. So yeah, there's a lot of finger pointing going on. I know that there's been a lot of soul searching within our own team around consenting, and so any comments of that nature in submissions are taken on board. And yeah, again, I'm just in full support of the recommendation.
Thank you. Mr Bersini Tule.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. This is probably the one kaupapa that came up strongly amongst our community. And I just want to go back to what Mr Thomas was saying about Papakainga housing. But it's such a broad issue when it comes to housing problems and housing challenges, especially with Te Aroha. So similar to the community plan, so long as there's a plan. If no one's taking the lead, then we're kind of waiting for the market forces, or I don't know, for some, I don't know. But if there's a plan for us all to participate and join and to make sure that there are sustainable housing options for our kaumātua who are looking for kaumātua units, all the way down to our rangatahi who are going into training, I would love just a simple unit, a small unit, something where they could just call their own while they study. I think we're missing all of the big things and also kind of failing to address all the small things. So at least bring.
Thank you. Councillor Kai Fong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, basically I'm in support of the recommendation. I suppose the hardest bit is that the second part of the recommendation is that we note the further feedback received and where appropriate, incorporate that into the framework and action plans. But we've got the issue, for example, of intensification where there's both support for and against. So obviously there needs to be a lot of further work and discussion around that. I think that a role of council when we originally put this plan out was to enable sections as opposed to council actually taking on its role in building houses, and maybe that's still something in terms of a further discussion, because it seems that the original plan that we went out with was that we would enable sections. And so for all of that, we were doing master planning, stormwater, talking about consenting and processing and things like that. But the other role is, well, how do we hurry up and get houses built if the private sector market is not going to come to the party? And I don't necessarily want council to be involved in a situation of competing against private developers, but where we can assist them with processing. But also, is there an opportunity for council at that other end of the scale for social housing? And that's maybe another discussion for us to have, as well as that discussion around intensification. So I think that, you know, making more land available is something that we haven't really discussed, other than the opening up the new blocks of land, as opposed to how can we better use the land that we currently have houses on. So I look forward to that discussion, but basically in support of the recommendation.
Thank you. Any further? Thank you, Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, along with those around the table, support the motions. I think absolutely we have a housing crisis, and we can't just be building houses, but we need to be building communities as well. And I am a huge supporter of building up as well, rather than just out. But we also need to be building homes that will be able to withstand the impacts of climate change. For example, possibly rainwater collection, more green spaces. But I think one of the other points that really make up a thriving community is a quality public transport network. And I acknowledge the work that Mr. Thomas has done with the Regional Council on the Public Transport Committee. And us as a council, because our public transport network is run by the Regional Council, we need to be pushing them for better services, a more user-friendly network, so that we can get ridership numbers up again. As you may know, that the ridership numbers have decreased 50% in the last three years. So we do want to get that up again to reduce congestion, but also to support our environment and mitigation and adaptation as well. Kia ora.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I presume that you've all seen in the last week or so the reaction to our announcement by other communities, other councils around the country, saying, well, why haven't we got an announcement like that was made last week by the Minister, Megan Wood, for Rotorua's situation? But we do have our housing plan now. We do have identified partners that are going to work alongside us, and also ensure that we do have attention provided to social housing as well as affordable housing too. Rotorua is not the only city in New Zealand that has a significant housing issue. But what we are prepared to do, and have been, is actually to develop our own plan that suits our needs, and actually now put in the work to make sure it's successful. So thank you for that discussion, councillors. Are there any further discussion? Otherwise, I'm just going to ask Your Worship if you'd like to. You moved. If you'd like to.
Well, I think we've covered almost everything here, but colleagues should be congratulated for facing this issue as soon as we were elected, and we got going straight away. We knew the problems. They were a slow burn, over the last 3 years of this council, and some issues actually didn't get traction but have now been picked up, and plan changes from the Minister of the Environment's office is enabling also. But I am a little concerned about our district plan, because we're now much clearer where we want to go. And we're much clearer with a spatial plan, actually, about where we can safely open up sustainable development. And that includes some land that iwi are now bringing to the table, where they see that there could be subdivisions that they want to lead. And so working together in partnership is absolutely the way to go. I also believe, and it's a little bit building on Councillor Bentley's comment and yours, Councillor Kai Fong, about what we can do actually in the city. Because there are people that if we made it more affordable and easier, a 101 would subdivide and allow more building in the inner city and in the suburbs of our town. I am concerned about the pace of building affordable homes. I understand about needing a rate of return, but we must be building staircasing affordability of people out of emergency housing, social housing, into affordable housing. And that should be the priority that we put in our housing plan as we go forward. So that is certainly important, and I like to hear the issues of a linked and connected community with cycleways, with public transport networks that connect these, particularly the hubs. And I did hear during the submissions the call for more inner city housing and apartments. And I believe that's something that will give the visibility to the public that we are doing something, rather than developments that they don't really see. Oh, I apologise. Oh, it's on. Where was I? Yeah, so no, I've completely lost the plot there because I'm sorry about it. Yes. So in the city, there were many people that actually wondered why it was so complex to actually get buildings and apartments in the inner city. And so I congratulate the Chamber of Commerce and those other partners and RED that are looking at that as part of our way forward and opening up there, because there are many prepared to get away from their quarter-acre pavlova paradise. They don't need it anymore, but they're looking for actual supported living, clustered and living that they can actually enjoy mixed housing developments. So we must look at that. We're on the right track. I really like the hubs. I really like the way that we're now partnership with iwi, who through their MOUs are coming to the table with their housing aspirations and saying we've got land, it's just so hard to open it up because of the costs of infrastructure. We've got that link through our strategy with government, and we've got to use it for all that we can go. And I know that this will get fulsome support. So yes, we are ahead of the game in terms of other cities and districts, because we now have got the voice of government, and that is very important. Whoever is in government, that we work together in partnership. So I really look forward to the next phase of Homes and Thriving Communities strategic framework. That's what we're all about.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am going to put that recommendation that the committee continues to support the outcomes and action plans identified in the He Papakanga, He Tāpori, Turikura, Te Paupo Rautaki Homes and Thriving Communities Strategic Framework, that the committee notes the further feedback received and, where appropriate, incorporate the feedback into the framework and action plans, and 3, that the committee supports ongoing work between Rotorua Lakes Council and partnership with stakeholders and the wider community to lead the implementation of the plan. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Yes, well, yes, indeed. Topic 6 now, that's our economic development. What we went out to on that, the recommendation as per the consultation document. Yes, sorry, did you want to have, sorry?
I would like to move this recommendation.
Oh, certainly. All right. Well, I'll just get to that. I'll just read them out. Thank you. That the committee supports the outcomes identified in the draft EDS and notes that action plans will be created for each of the 3 priority areas. 2, that the committee notes that work is underway to finalise these action plans by the end of the year and that implementation will be initiated during the first 3 years of the long-term plan. 3, that the committee recommends to Council to proceed with its commitment of $29 million towards economic development, $9 million in the 2021 and $20 million in 21-22, and 4, that the committee supports ongoing work between Rotorua Lakes Council, business leaders and partners to lead the development of these plans. So thank you, Councillor Kai Fong, you're moving and seconded by Councillor Donaldson. So I'll put that motion, discussion, invite the discussion, sorry. Yes, so it's open for discussion, thank you. Did you want to talk first, Councillor Kai Fong? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I know you've told us that we can't keep talking about COVID, but this was a COVID initiative for recovery for this district. So I think that what we're trying to do is build from the grassroots. We're trying to create jobs for our people. We're trying to make Rotorua a place where people want to come.
Can you move your microphone? That's right, thank you.
Come and work, and that we have appropriate places for them to live in. So this is an economic development strategy that's focused on both jobs, it's focused on land development, it's looking at both housing as well as commercial development. It's also a continuation of work that we've already started. So, you know, we've also come out of the COVID-19 after the lockdown. We started some work with COVID recovery pretty quickly, and this is just a continuation of that. So I would be supportive of us continuing to support the projects that have been outlined.
Yes, thank you. I did see somebody else. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also speaking in support. I just note that the conflict I declared earlier, the decision's already been taken on that matter, so I'm comfortable, I'm not conflicted. And, you know, I fully support the comments of my colleague, Councillor Kai Fong. You know, this is one of our key wellbeing issues for our community. As at last week, my understanding is MSD had 10,000 people registered as job seekers on the job seekers benefit in Rotorua. And so, you know, if that's not convincing, I don't know what is, that we need to get behind economic development and creating the environment to provide jobs. It also links into our housing strategy. And so I think, you know, I could go on, but I won't. I'm fully in support.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Donaldson. You are right. Everything actually is interlinked. Our homes, having good homes and that suit, you know, fit for purpose. Our work, our businesses, and our jobs. It's all interlinked, and so it's just important that we don't lose sight of that. Thank you, Your Worship.
I'm in total support here, and this did begin, as Councillor Kai Fong said, in a very challenging time, and we did it by Zoom. And we began this, and this 29 million was appropriated there to actually start with the economic development of making our place good for investors. That's why I'm so concerned at some of the other publicity that's actually very damaging for those that are looking to invest. Meanwhile, investment continues in our town, and it is because we've got these strategic priorities. Very, very important for us to have them, and very much so ready for business when that tourism sector does stand up again, albeit differently, because it will come back, but it will be very, very different, and it must be sustainable tourism. And the way that we've actually fashioned our key priorities are really right for this. The other is the assets that we've got, our natural assets of our lakes and our forest. and what a gift they've been to us. And we learnt that also. And it is these events like Crankworks, it is the mountain biking and those great investments. It is the lakefront, it is the Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre, and it is Te Wharetanga or Te Arawa. We must look after our key assets that actually identify this sense of place so that it maintains its place on the national stage of a key tourism and visitor destination, as well as being good for our locals. I also think a lot of the public don't yet realise that the emerging industry of the film industry, particularly Māori production, is an emerging product that we are proudly actually supported, and the growth in that sector from the Animation College through to what we're doing now is something that we can be really proud of, because we're very sure of what is good for us and using the natural assets of our people to develop these commercial products and opportunities for us. So it is interlinked. This is absolutely critical, along with every other aspect that we've discussed today, and that's because we had a series of workshops as councillors, and we're often panned for having workshops that the public don't attend, but it's where we nut out what are the strands that, when we tie them together, are going to be the strength of our people, our place and our environment going forward without damaging our natural assets here. So this is a very, very important strategy, and again the word partnership comes in. Partnership with the business sector, partnership with investors, and partnership with iwi. And we can't do this on our own. And this is, we are facing absolutely critical times ahead, as Councillor Donaldson said, with our increasing job seeker sector. We've got to give our kids hope that they will get jobs and they will be able to raise their families in this place that they love. So this is a very important component of our strategy, and I like every aspect of it, and I like its sustainability footprint over it as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just ask JP. I understand, JP, there was something that you wanted to comment on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just the point raised by Councillor Donaldson about the number exceeding 10,000. MSD has just started to talk about the total combined benefit numbers, which is what's past 10,000. In the past, they've tended to just give us the isolated number on the job seekers. So just tagging that combined benefit number to just job seekers is not technically correct. It's all of their benefits that they've now passed 10,000.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, Madam Chair.
It tends to be even more alarming, actually, when you think of that. So thank you for that clarification. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I just wanted reassurance, because I know when we look at that figure, 29 million, it can be quite daunting, but it is also an opportunity to leverage the assets that we do have and to help those 10,000 people that are on some sort of benefit. Because when we lost tourism, we lost the heart of our community. It's the biggest employer in Rotorua, so we have to be innovative with how we move forward. So it is a question, first of all, on whether for all of those economic or recovery development projects there has been a business case and there will be clear return on investment. And that question is just to assure our community that when we're looking at a big figure like 29 million, we're being very purposeful that this money and that ratepayer money will be used in ways that we expect there to be a return economically, socially and environmentally.
Thank you. Yes, so that it's shared across all of those critical areas. Thank you. I don't know whether we can give a reassurance. Well, I presume we can. Absolutely, yes. Good, thank you.
And just my second comment as well, and it came from the other feedback in the submissions, but also some comments around the table, which was just to ensure the inclusion of agriculture into the economic development strategy. And the comment was that agriculture should be an aspiration and key priority area in the economic development strategy. And while they haven't been affected by tourism, they still are a key industry within our community. So just making sure we don't forget about them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those points. Mrs. Trumper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Tapsell. One of the things that I was going to bring up around agriculture, and it's one thing that people are probably seen in the news but don't actually realise, actually agriculture is suffering a lack of people wanting to work on the farm, and we need to be having programs where they are encouraged to learn. It is actually not just getting up and shearing a sheep or moving a fence. There's actually quite a lot involved. There's a lot of compliances, and that is actually putting stress. And one of the significant areas that we do need to think about is what do we do? Because agriculture has actually kept this city going and the businesses in the city operating during COVID. And I think that that has been a factor that has been missing in some of the conversations. I know that I bring it up enough. Most of you are aware I can say quite a lot about agriculture. The other thing that I really wanted to see and comment on was just to put it into perspective, the lakefront and the Waka development around cycling was done long before COVID. That was a commitment that the council made last term, and it is not something that could be stopped. It had to continue, and this council was brave enough to then continue looking at other ways of keeping people employed through that COVID section. But we also need to bear in mind that the Performing Arts Centre and the museum was closed because of an earthquake, and it was around the building regulations. Again, something that council could not do anything about. So a lot of those things, we need to keep those in mind, that we can't just stop because a couple of buildings, you know, we could shut the door and let them fall into disrepair, or we treasure those buildings and treasure what they can actually return to our city. And the other thing was, I know forestry is also an innovative way of getting income into the city, but I will reiterate that so is agriculture. And we have a lot of innovative people out there in our community that are just looking for an opportunity. And the rural community have basically said is agriculture is actually missing from this document. So we need to be there.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Yates, then Mr Thomas.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. As Councillor Tapsell mentioned, she spoke about the heart of our community was pretty much stripped during COVID last year, and that was tourism, but most importantly for us also it was Māori, our Māori tourism sector. And so diversification was necessary. We've got examples of film and other such activities which are providing job opportunities, but I'd actually like to support fellow colleague, Mrs Trumper, also with agriculture. We've just recently had the Ahu Whenua Awards where Tātai Whetū won those. There is an opportunity for us to be looking at job opportunities, and certainly whilst in May last year we were talking about being confident and courageous, I'd like us to be confident and courageous and be innovative as well when we start looking at job opportunities for our Māori tourism sector who are still hurting today and finding jobs for their staff. Nō reira e te iwi, I would like to support this as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Yates. Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Look, I think it's fantastic to have this document. I fully support it. And I think what we've been discussing today is a jigsaw puzzle. A lot of the things we've been looking at is individual pieces of that puzzle, but we fit these things all together to create a good environment for our people of Rotorua. We put them together to create innovation, we put them together to provide housing, jobs, and everything that makes us a fantastic place to live. And like to reiterate what the Mayor said around place setting, and it's place setting and home setting as well. It's not just for tourism, it's for us as well. And when we enjoy and love our city, that's when other people will come here and enjoy it and love it as well. Look, for a moment, I'll just put my Lakes water quality hat on, and I would just say about agriculture. You know, over the last 20 years, Rotorua has led in New Zealand around sustainable management of agricultural and forestry practices in terms of getting nutrients out of our waterways, out of our environment. And these are things that we have shown to the rest of the country how to do. So we have been innovating all the way along, but having this structure that we can follow and that we can be presenting to people coming into Rotorua, wanting to create businesses, opportunities, wanting to create jobs, it's vital for us to have this. So I fully support it.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I'm going to say straight right up front, I'm really proud of Rotorua Lakes Council, the way we handled this since March of last year. That, you know, and I really proud of all of us. We stood up and the leadership led us through all this. Build Back Better. Even the President of the United States pinched our Logan. He used it and he got elected. So all the major projects, we didn't turn around and say, sit on your hands, don't do anything. We continued on. And a big thanks has to go to our staff for this too. I say that to you, Mr. CEO, you and your staff. Worked hard through some very challenging times, but they were there. And we didn't give up. And I think the community also appreciated that. I know it's been said by others in the tourism area and various areas, there are people hurting, and I think they're going to still continue to hurt as we build back better. I mean, New Zealand itself is leading in the world, and Rotorua, we're part of it. Kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Mr. Bassini Tuli.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. I've always had a bit of a question mark around job creation and the role of council. Sometimes I see that council can play competition to local businesses, and sometimes I see local procurement gets overlooked, and the money that we should be investing into our local businesses kind of gets pushed to the side. So I've always been challenged around what is council's job in creating jobs? And even right now, I see the plans and the projects that we'd like to support, but I also think we're missing key elements. We all too often become a bit legacy-based, and so we start putting all our eggs in the ag basket. We've been doing it 20 years, let's keep doing it. We put all our eggs in tourism, we've been doing it 100 years, let's keep doing it. And by putting all our eggs in the basket, they always break. And tourism was just, sometimes that one industry has all of those other multiplier effects. And once tourism broke, so many other industries broke around it. And for me, we can talk about diversity, but we never go beyond tourism and agriculture. As a young businessman, why aren't we looking at the actual asset we have, young people? Why aren't we looking at incubation? Why aren't we looking at startup services? This is not the first time I've mentioned it, or it's been mentioned at this table. You've got lots of young businesses here who want to start up, who want to get support at the startup stage, who want to get support at that acceleration stage, who want to bring in capital investment, who want to bring in angel investors, and get very little support from this council. So while we talk about job creation, I think we're sometimes disingenuous by not actually helping local innovators and local incubators to break beyond. You know, if an innovation project came to town, we'd have to wait behind agriculture and tourism, even though tourism is kind of in the doldrums. There's this, no, we're coming, tourism will be back eventually. But right now we've got incubation, we've got so many young people. So I attended the Rotorua Careers 2 days last week, and for every one position, there are 10 rangatai. So what I suspect is we're going to be excellent at exporting our youth. Once again, our best and brightest will not find a place here. What they'll do is they'll go to Hamilton then they'll go to Auckland, and then once the borders will open, they'll leave. And they won't come back here until they've got their own whānau. So we've got a 20-year gap. So for me, this plan doesn't really put rangatahi on the radar, let alone put Rotorua on the map. We need a bit more than just a couple of tourism and a couple of ag things. In the innovation and incubation space, we're not even there. So while I support the plan, I still think there's so many blind spots we're missing and so many niches we should be really looking into. But for me, if it's about job creation and if there's money going in, make sure that procurement, local procurement and Te Aroha procurement is part of the equation. If we're just putting $29 million to go to Tauranga or Auckland businesses, it's not worth it.
Thank you. No, thank you. First of all, I appreciate that you've just come back onto the committee, Mr. Tule, Senior Tule, but I think you're somewhat out of touch, actually. Read the plan, have a look at it, and the discussions that have taken place in the workshops, have a look at and talk to some of the people that have put a lot of time and effort in the last 12 months, in particularly coming to terms with the fact that we can never go back to where we were before. So innovation has been something that this council has been pushed. Can I just say, it's not easy to see people in our community lose their jobs, have reduced hours, have businesses close. That's not an easy thing for us to sit around the table and have to clearly understand that that has an impact. For every person that loses their job, 6 others are impacted on by that loss. So it's not easy. So we do have to bounce back, but we've got to bounce back better and in different ways. And this is definitely what this economic development strategy is actually trying to do, to look for the innovators. And they have been coming. They've been coming to the Mayor's office, they've been coming to our CCOs and to the Chamber and everybody else who is actually looking to see how can we ensure that we can start to come out the other end as sooner rather than later, and having different opportunities available there for our young people in particular. So we're not sitting on our hands, and I do support this. Excuse me, I do support the consultation document that went out in terms of economic development. Councillor Donaldson, you have something? Yes.
If you could indulge me with a bit of a second throw, Madam Chair, look, I think it's refreshing that Mr. Biasuni-Toole throws down the wero in respect of innovators and rangatahi, but as you pointed out, we do already provide significant support in that space. Perhaps JP could enlarge upon it, but this council supports the Incubate, Accelerate programs that are run by business coaches in our community, and I would encourage Councillor Mr. Biasuni-Toole to perhaps have a chat with JP to see how some of his innovative thinking could be folded into some of our projects and planning in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that I don't see enough in this economic plan. There's a lot of things covered, but I believe in Rotorua is Rotorua in light manufacturing. We provide a lot of opportunities, lots of jobs, and I don't know if I can see whether light manufacturing is included in this. We have, and I agree. I actually agree with a lot of things Pautawa has to say, and it's a shame that in the same breath that he's mentioned that he's been out of touch, I think he's talking about some real facts over here, and it's quite refreshing that he's back and he can highlight those. So I believe that when we look at also our wood first policy to encourage and incentivize, we've been looking at wood first policy for quite some years at the council. However, with forestry right in our domain that creates a lot of exports and jobs, just recently, even though we have light manufacturing right at our doors as well, the options are to support them as well, because that creates a lot of local jobs. And to just conclude that, when we have our own wood first policy, sometimes we just can't use our own wood. The lakefront bridge is a good example, pathway. We've had to go all the way to South America for that.
Thank you, Councillor Kumar. Councillors, thank you. Now, who is... Yes, Your Worship.
I do just want to have another crack. So when we had the workshops...
Shall we say another comment, please?
Another comment, yes. When we had the workshops, we had them with Te Tato, and we councillors that participated agreed that what were the priority areas, and they're in the plan. They're here. Everything you're talking about is here. A place of choice, the future of forestry, and ready for business. And that's what we said we needed to focus on. We can't do everything or a little bit of something. So we were very targeted, and that was a challenge amongst us all. And we challenged one another, and we talked about the challenges you're putting on the table, and we agreed these were the priority areas that will give us the greatest gain in the future. I just do want to say that it's important that we participate in the workshops, that we know what you're bringing to the workshops, because that's where we do have our conversations, questioning officers of council, resetting the priorities and challenging, and we own it. It's our process. We shouldn't be arguing that here today. We should have done it when we had our workshops and challenged to get the right advice about have we got the right areas and the right priorities. This is the LTP. We're going out with this. We've gone out. We've got feedback. We've got positive feedback on this. If you want to participate in the future, then do please come to these workshops where we discuss things at great depth and then come up with our priorities. These are great. I think there's always a lot that we could challenge each other on and where we could do more. But every bit of doing more fits into one of those three. And then we'll have the business cases around those to develop. And that's where the finances are going to be directed. So this is a very good economic development strategy. This is a draft. It's gone out. It's been very positively received for those that went to all of the community mahi and the workshops that we had. The workshops here at council. I did hear one Te Tato member say, if I was the mayor, I'd start building. We are, but we're doing it differently. We don't build houses. We enable. We enable, and we enable it through partnerships. So I'm totally supportive of this. This is not the time to reset the priorities. We did it and took them out to our community, and our communities come back with feedback. That's participating in consultation, in my view.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Kai Fong, then Councillor Yates.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, for a second comment. Just in response to some of the comments made by my fellow councillors, just wanted a quick reply in that this is just one part of our economic development strategy. We have tasked a whole economic development agency, of which is a council-controlled organisation, to look at some of the issues that have been raised. And so we have given them a mandate that it's for them to be looking at making commercial land and partnering with bringing manufacturing to Rotorua, for finding strategies for partnering with innovators and incubators and providing training and opportunities for rangatahi. So we already do that, and we have actually tasked our Economic Development Agency to do that. I think in terms of our Wood First policy, I think that coming up in our climate change policy review, one of the things will be that we have agreed to have a review of the Wood First policy and how we as a council implement that. So I think there's an opportunity for us to progress that. But this policy is just one part of the economic recovery in the long-term plan, but we still have sitting beside us and working with us our Economic Development Agency, who are working on the issues that have been raised as some of the concerns as part of this plan.
Thank you, Councillor Kai Fong. Councillor Yates, thank you.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And this point is probably more so also for our public that are listening, and it's to reiterate once again that we've had a series of workshops, and also our public that are sitting here in chamber today, nei rate mihi kia koutou. So we have had a number of workshops where we have deliberated these things at length. And can I just pick up and support my whanaunga, tēnā koe potaua, for raising those things. But in number 3 there, ready for business, it does specifically identify talent, entrepreneurs and business innovators relocated or within Rotorua, and right at the bottom of the total there is a part there under unallocated projects at business case stage, which is an opportunity, once again, for us to be thinking innovatively around how we create incubator spaces. So I think it is in there, and it's just about figuring out which parts of the puzzle we want to pull together to enable our community to thrive. So I just wanted to point that out for our public.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me speak again too. I just want to reiterate, I'm still proud of the way Council handled it, and I want to add a bit more to the corridor. One is, it wasn't only workshops we had during last year, during those challenging times. We had 6 or so Zoom calls for a couple of hours each time, and that's how we kept in touch with each other about, and with the staff, how the progress has been making. And the other one is, and that was set up during COVID, I think you touched on it, Your Worship, and that was the film industry. We're seeing on our screens right now the benefit of that. TV2 tonight. Watch Vegas. Kia ora.
Thank you. You're finishing on that note, are you? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion, councillors. Councillor Kai Fong, is there anything further you wish to add as the mover?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I think I've
Thank you. Well, I'm going to read those points again, and because we have had a mover and a seconder, that the committee supports the outcomes identified in the draft economic development strategy and notes that action plans will be created for each of the 3 priority areas. 2, that the committee notes that work is underway to finalise these action plans by the end of the year and that implementation will be initiated during the first 3 years of the long-term plan. 3, that the committee recommends to Council to proceed with its commitment of $29 million towards economic development, $90 million 2021 years and $20 million 21-22 years. 4, that the committee supports ongoing work between Rotorua Lakes Council, business leaders and partners to lead the development of these plans. It's been moved and seconded. Councillors, I'll put that motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Thank you, councillors. And I'll take one more topic today before we conclude for the afternoon. And don't forget, we are continuing tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And so this is the climate change topic number 7 on our agenda. Recommendations as per the consultation document that the committee supports the outcomes identified in the Climate Action Plan and notes the action plans identified in the 30-year infrastructure strategy. 2, that the committee notes that implementation will be initiated during the first 3 years of the long-term plan. 3, that the committee supports ongoing work between Rotorua Lakes Council and partnership with stakeholders and the wider community to lead the implementation of the plan. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wang. Thank you, Mr. Councillor Donaldson. And some discussion, please, on that plan. Thank you, Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to thank all the staff that have been involved in putting this plan together. Can I just say, Rotorua Lakes Council does have a climate action plan now. We do have a climate action plan and we are taking climate action. This climate action plan works very closely with the Council's 30-year infrastructure strategy. And we all know the problems we do have with our infrastructure and the need to mitigate and adapt to the problems that we have experienced in the past and the more problems that we will experience in the future. But I would just like to say the need that we need to partner with community organisations such as the Te Arawa Climate Action Working Group, Te Urunga o Kia, that need to work with the Sustainable Business Charter here in Rotorua, the Climate Action Forum, and also Scion as well. We've got the Crown Research Institute right in our backyard. I know the Council earlier on in our triennium, we passed a motion to convert our public lighting and street lights in Rotorua from halogen to LED lighting. That policy, that move itself is reducing the light pollution that it's emitting. It reduces our electricity consumption. But you can see in the plan, we will be experiencing hotter days, we will be experiencing drier days, but also on the other end as well, more extreme rainfall events. And we do need to prepare our infrastructure network and our district as a whole to mitigate against these climate change effects. So I think to end this, I think I'd like to say we are taking a lot of action in this area, upgrading our wastewater treatment plant, investigating organic waste collection, which is a very big one, and a lot of people I have talked to are in huge support of this. It has a potential to divert up to 5,000 tonnes of waste from the landfill per year, and that equates to about 6% reduction in our emissions as a district, which is really, really massive. But yeah, again, to end, fully support this climate action plan, and we do need to, we adapt for the worst, but we mitigate in hope for the best outcome. Thank you.
Very nicely put. Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And look, I support everything that Councillor Wang has said. As well as this strategy linking into our infrastructure strategy, I think also it links in very strongly with our Homes and Thriving Communities strategy. I did note in the feedback that we received in reading through the submissions in relation to Transport and Urban Form, a strong call from a number of submitters to consider accessibility for all members of the community. That came through quite strong for me. And yeah, certainly building and energy systems, I think with our Homes and Thriving Communities planning, new subdivisions, new buildings, we do need to be looking at every way we can conserve potable water, deal with our wastewater, but if there are any sceptics left out there, I think the month of May in New Zealand, with record temperatures since records began in places like Napier and Christchurch, I think there can't be many sceptics left that we need this. We need this strategy and we need to get it underway. So I'm in support.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Bentley, then Her Worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to the normal occurring of the world's life cycle, which we now call climate change, I must reiterate, I've got to complain about, you give instructions at the beginning of a meeting about having phones turned off. I noticed, yes. But anyway, one of the main things that come out of this discussions we've had with different people is that we must do everything in our power to protect our green spaces as we see them at the moment. And the obvious one, of course, is Westbrook area, being the Springfield Golf Club. That is a treasure that we've got to encourage and continue with. And we're not going to be able to get onto the subject today, and my apologies for the meeting tomorrow. I've made prior arrangements, so I won't be here. So I think that if we spent as much money preserving what we've got, rather than taxing us by way of climate change things, we'd be a lot better off.
Thank you. Your Worship?
Well, I just think we've seen some leadership emerge here today on many of these key challenges and the 5 areas that we're showing. And I congratulate you, Councillor Wang, for actually getting out and amongst our community on this issue. And it takes me back to, yeah, we've got a climate change action plan, one of the few in the country that has. And we supported that, and we got that through council. And now we've got deliverables against that plan that we're signing off by this resolution today. And we are focused on sustainability, wood first, our people, and growing our people and our place while protecting the environment. The one comment I wanted to make was there was some criticism I heard at one of the meetings about the detail in our consultation document. And I want to say that this is such a good documentation. It's got loads of detail in here, and if it doesn't detail what people need to know, it asks you to go to have a look at our climate change action plan, go and have a look at our infrastructure plan. And when we're talking about key assets, we've got to remember that while we're developing land to meet our people's needs, the subject that we're going to be discussing tomorrow is about managing stormwater and managing it so we don't flood lower lying areas such as we've had in the past. That is no waste of money in my view, and that underpins this climate change action plan. The other issue was that the workshop with school children. I wished councillors came to that, and many did, because those children were more interested in the long-term future of their people and what we're doing about climate change than they were in anything else. And one child moved me profoundly by saying, we've also got to look after our older people. Now, for kids to think like that was absolutely fantastic. So everything is in here. And this isn't a waste of money. This is critically important to underpin our drinking water, our storm water, our sewage, and that'll come out in the debate tomorrow. We cannot be climate change deniers anymore. We must invest in sustainable solutions, and for me that also includes food sustainability for us, using and growing our own food, and I know that we're looking at that. So mitigation and adaptation is so important for us. This is an absolute no-brainer for the majority of us, and very important because it underpins every single aspect of everything we do about our place and our future. If we don't look after it, we take out those very suburbs that we care about. And we saw it in the floods in Nongataha, that they were far bigger than that. We saw the areas of Grey Street, Elizabeth Street, those areas that our people live in and choose to live in, affected by adverse weather events, and we cannot ignore it. So this is a very important priority. I'm glad we took it out to the community, and actually I was really pleased with the level of support at every workshop that we went to. So I support the recommendations.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Tapsell and then Mrs Trumper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Look, I've got to say that I'm so happy to have this on the table, because I remember when I came in 2013 and waved the climate change flag, and there were many people around the table at that time that didn't believe that climate change is real. But look at the effects that our environment and our people have had to cope with over those years. We've had areas of our communities underwater that previously thought they were safe. We know that clean water isn't always a given. And the work that this council has done, I must acknowledge, because to have climate change as a council key priority is hugely significant. But even more significant is the fact that we have practical and proven ways that we are going to not only mitigate but adapt to climate change. And that's leading across New Zealand. Our council is leading the local government in terms of our actions. And that actually comes from the work of our passionate staff as well, who for years have not only waited to have a climate change action plan, but have always looked to how can we do this more practically and in a way that's more beneficial for our environment. Because I have to say that climate change actually poses one of the biggest threats to our investments as council. Whether it's infrastructure, whether it's our buildings, it's one of the biggest threats that we have. And this proposal in front of us promotes and provides for intergenerational equity. So we can not only meet those needs of our present population, but make sure that we aren't compromising our future generations. So I'm happy that in this we have practical solutions that not only have environmental, but also economic benefits. The world has innovated to a point where it's no longer just a nice to have, it's a we need to have this. And I'm very happy that we've got this here. I'm happy to support it, and I hope that all of my councillors will unanimously agree to support this as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. Mrs Trumper, then Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I really don't have a lot to say, obviously, around the climate action plan itself. To me, it's far more practical than actually, because it actually has some teeth in it, rather than declaring a climate emergency, which I think is just nice to have words and spoken out loud, whereas we're actually doing something about it. The one thing that I've had feedback around is water collection and water metering. And I know water metering is not a very popular subject in town because of the way our housing is sitting in town, and that we have, you know, lower socio-economic homes that are having 7 or 8 people in their house, so going through a lot more water than the superannuitant that is living on their own. But we need to find an equitable way of ensuring that people pay for what they are using, and also capturing that loss. And obviously this is something that I'll bring up tomorrow with the infrastructure. All our farms are metered. We have to actually pay to have a consent to take the water from the land, and we have to pay regional council for that. Well, this is for Waikato Regional Council, and it's something that we need to be considering how we actually come up with a plan for that. The other thing is water collection, and what happens to our grey water and what happens to our rainwater, and how we can actually utilise that better. We have a really, I suppose, large block of land, and all our drains are dry. Our lake, not Ngāpuri, but our lake that was on our own property is now dry, and it has never been dry. Our spring that supplies our stock is now dry. We're having to use our bore. So the groundwater levels are significantly lower, and they have been getting lower over a number of years. So I think this is something that we all have to take really seriously. I know that Mr Thomas will bring up the lakes and the risks around our lakes and the levels dropping. But I think we do need to be very mindful that this is something, climate change is here, and we can say it isn't, but it certainly is, and we have to find ways to look after it.
Thank you very much, Mrs Trumper. It was my intention to finish dead on 4 o'clock. We may be going over, but by 4:15 I will be adjourning the meeting. Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I promise to be brief. Look, I wholly support this and absolutely endorse Councillor Tapsell's comments and Councillor Wang's comments, and congratulate them both on the work they have both done in this area. Living out at the lakes, I have been seeing the effects of climate change out there for 20 plus years. We see it not only in the deterioration of the lakes, we see it in terms of water levels, we see it in terms of intensity of rainfall, we see it in terms of flooding. I think one thing that is really important to note here, that we need to have regional council working with us as well. So, you know, one of the issues we need to be addressing is that public transport, and we're lucky to have such passionate staff here at Rotorua who are working really hard to see public transport improvement in the Rotorua district. Sometimes they're at loggerheads with regional council, but we all seem to be working well together now, so it is great to see progress being made there. And I look forward to seeing implementations we can put out in our rural and lakes areas. You know, a lot of our areas are on state highways, and it's very hard to have cycleways and those sorts of means of active transport, but where we can do it, we do. So that's just all I wanted to say, but congratulations on the plan, and congratulations to Council that we are progressing this, and we're not just saying things, we're actually doing things.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Bersini, Tule.
Good, Madam Chair. Yeah, just a small comment to acknowledge both Councillor Tapsell and Councillor Wang for being persistent, and also to acknowledge our kaitiaki throughout all of Rotorua for looking after their whenua and for bringing that to our attention. Kia ora.
Thank you. And thank you, because you're quite right, Councillor Tapsell, from the time you came on board, this has really been something that you, and as a young person, of course, you're right to do that, because that's the world that you're going to have, you and your babies are going to be living in, and wanting to make sure that they can have the access to all of, I shouldn't be saying that, should I? Making suggestions, but it tends to be the younger people that are really concerned about climate change. Because, well, all people, but I mean the younger people have made their presence felt around the council table and at the various meetings as well, because they are concerned. And we've seen it overseas with the younger ones coming through and making sure that it's taken seriously as well. So it's Councillor Wang, you might like to have the final word. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some final comments. Yes, I'd like to thank Councillor Tapsell for all the work that she has done in the climate change area. I really, really appreciate it, and I really love working alongside her. I'd also like to thank Mrs. Trumper and actually acknowledge the role our rural community, our primary industry sector plays the role that it plays in climate action. They are doing some amazing work that often isn't shown, and I know for a fact personally the work that is going on in that area. But you know, again, following on from Councillor Tapsell's comments, this isn't a nice to have, this is a must have. Our people are experiencing the effects of climate change every day. Our farms are experiencing droughts, they're experiencing record droughts. Our homes are experiencing flooding. This is no longer something just floating alongside there, or something that we can just kind of consult with but not do anything. We're actually, with this plan, we're walking the walk, we're not just talking the talk. And these decisions that we make, we're making with our future generations in mind, and they're truly mokopuna decisions. And with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, yes. Yes, I wasn't being selective. So thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that the committee supports the outcomes identified in the Climate Action Plan and notes the action plans identified in the 30-year infrastructure strategy. That the committee notes that implementation will be initiated during the first 3 years of the long-term plan, and that the committee supports ongoing work between Rotorua Lakes Council and participation with stakeholders and the wider community to lead the implementation of the plan. I'll put that motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Carried. Well, thank you very much, councillors. That concludes our first day discussing the feedback from our long-term plan. Thank you. Councillor Bentley, apologies for tomorrow have been noted. Thank you for advising us of that. And so I'm going to just adjourn our meeting for today, and we resume tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So thank you, councillors and committee members. Thank you.